I never thought I'd be this happy to talk about a TV. No way a TV can have any drama, right?
I don't think we review TVs enough to be looped into what I know is TV drama, at least based on what like Caleb has shared with us in conversations. I think any hobbyist forum or channel can get dramatic.
Oh, the internet is so messy.
It is.
I mean, my goodness.
But we're going to stay focused today.
Yeah.
We're going to stay focused today. Today's about the TCL.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Everybody, welcome to Unplugged.
Some
I don't
episode.
know which one it is. Maybe it's 20?
It might be.
We did
Are we counting the lives?
Yeah, we did a couple of lives. I don't typically count the lives.
Yeah, I count the lives.
Oh, you do?
Well, I don't know. It doesn't.
Well, maybe we're at like 22 or something. I don't know.
Either 20 or 22.
No one cares.
The true fans will let us know.
Yeah, you guys let me know. Whichever episode we're on.
Yeah.
I really, really liked this television.
Yeah. That wasn't a secret to me.
Oh yeah. He knew.
I knew. You wouldn't stop telling me how you felt about the TV the entire time we had it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know why I was as surprised about this television, because I have in general been a fan of TCL TVs in the past.
Yeah.
It was so impressive.
Yeah.
And it's definitely the first big size TV that we've had that has made me second guess the Sony.
Yeah, I can see that.
Not that I don't still like the Sony. I do.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we put it up. Andrew put it up yesterday.
Yeah, by the time people see this, earlier in the week.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Welcome to the future. So you've already seen the review.
Yeah.
And Andrew finally got it all boxed up.
Yeah, the TCL's already boxed up. By the time you see this, it actually is already it's actually already been returned.
Yes. So the Sony got put back up on the wall, and I'm not gonna lie, I was like looking right over my shoulder at the boxed up TCL and thinking to myself, how do I tell him? How do I tell him I want him to unbox it, put it back up on the wall, and figure it out? But alas, I kept that to myself. Look, the TCL is so impressive. It has such great, rich blacks.
Mm-hmm.
I feel it has a element of OLED black.
Yeah.
If you are a hyper OLED fan, I'm sorry if I've just completely ruined your day. It was not intentional. I just think that the blacks on this particular TV, especially for such a large size television, are very, very good.
Yeah.
Especially if you're watching movies, for example, like Furiosa. The TCL, I feel, is sharp. There's great contrast. I was actually thinking about this. I think it would be a really good television for people that struggle with vision problems.
Yeah.
A lot of things about this television, including that it's not, $10,000 or something like the Samsung, that make it a really, really competitive option. I don't know. What do you think?
Oh, I'm in complete agreement. It is a very, very viable option. And like I said in the review, on points, you have to give the win to the Sony, because in very specific use cases, it does do better than the TCL. It just does. And I'm talking about scaling of legacy signals. Those of you with DVDs or 1080p material, the Sony's going to be a little bit better, and you're going to notice it in the skin tones, in the textures of organic material. It just doesn't apply quite as much smoothening to those types of surfaces the way the TCL still kind of does. But aside from really that, and maybe a little bit of processor speed, they both use Google operating system, but the menu response time, the snappiness of the Google OS is a little bit better on the Sony compared to the TCL. But minus those two things, the TCL goes blow for blow with the Sony X90L for almost half the price. Now, one of the reasons why I think the black bars looked more OLED-like to you, though, is that subtle crush from about, I'll call it 30 IRE down to 0 that the TCL just applies. And I brought this up in the review. Now, I personally, like you, I kind of dug it. Like, I get that it's not right. It's not technically broadcast or whatever standard, but it kind of made everything pop. And not in that artificial way that Samsung does it, where they just end up inserting like a 1 or 2 pixel black line around everything. I hate that. This just crushed the blacks a little bit and kept them there. And I think it works to the TCL's favor. I really, really do. And in terms of light output, like, forget about it. Like the TCL, I'm using the term asleep metaphorically, but the TCL asleep is as bright as the Sony can get. You know what I mean? So that's the first thing you notice when going back and forth, watching Furiosa on the TCL the night before, boxing it up, and then watching Furiosa again on the Sony. It's not like the Sony was bad. It was really, really good. Arguably very cinematic, very almost projector-like, which is something we mentioned in our Sony review. But that pop, that three-dimensionality that kind of leaps off the screen, TCL had that in spades.
Oh, I totally agree. And you brought up Furiosa watching Furiosa on the Sony, which I was going to mention as well. One of my notes I made was watching Furiosa on the Sony gave the movie for Furiosa a more film-like quality.
Exactly.
Versus the TCL was just...
It's just a more modern look.
Yeah, a more modern. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was struggling how to describe it, but yes, a more modern, look.
Yeah.
But overall, just 2 very good televisions.
Exceptional.
But anyway, I love the TV. I think it's awesome. And I do kind of wish we still could put it back on the wall.
Yeah.
But if you don't want to take my word for it or Andrew's word for it, Vincent at 512 Forever has one and loves it.
Well,
they say, I bought the 98-inch TCL QM851G about a month ago. They got this to replace a 75-inch Samsung, which was about 7 years old. And they say, I have to say, this television is great in movie mode and more than bright enough to handle my bright living room with deep blacks and virtually no blooming. It's a monster. I would definitely grab this TV over anything else for, about the $4,000 price point.
I completely agree.
Okay, so let's move on to some of the comments we received on our TCL review.
Okay.
We have 2 questions related to motion and DSE, or dirty screen effect.
Okay.
So Alan Dawson says, so TCLs have typically struggled with upscaling motion and handling poor streaming content versus, say, Sony. From your review, it sounds like they have closed a lot of the gap. Would you still make this your everyday TV for sports and TV shows? And then Jer says, my understanding is that OLEDs usually have better gray uniformity and no DSE. It is so distracting when you watch sports like football, when you go from side to side and end to end. So DSE didn't bother you when you watched the women's soccer final on the Olympics? I mean, I thought we said in your review that it was like a master class or something.
No, you were right. You were right. Yeah. For everyday viewing, as a everyday carry kind of television for TV and streaming and sports and all of that, yeah, I do think that the TCL is really, really good. Is it the best I've seen? Maybe not 100%, like it's a high 90s, but maybe not 100%. But the thing about streaming that you have to keep in mind, and sports especially, is a lot of the things that people react to as poor motion and stuff, that also can fall on the fault of the broadcast and the signal and the compression. Like, it's not always like, oh, it's the TV's fault. Because especially when we're talking about streaming and broadcast, like if you encounter a stutter, if you encounter something like that, it's almost impossible to replicate. Never mind like grabbing another TV to see if it does it again. You know what I mean? Especially if you're watching something live. So try and kind of maintain your expectations just a little bit and leave a little bit of wiggle room that motion stuttering or things like that may not be entirely the fault of the television. As for DSE, OLEDs, OLED is just a different panel technology. It's a different illumination technology. It just is a different TV. So it doesn't have all of the same drawbacks, but it has drawbacks that LED-based displays don't have. So it's just going to come down to what's most important for you. As for watching sports, again, motion was really good. The DSE that we did observe in test patterns on the TCL really didn't rear their head when viewing at least the soccer match. You know what I mean? Now, I think at one point I might have noticed a little bit of DSE in the upper left corner. When we were watching the triathlon, the women's, I think it was the women's triathlon, when they were swimming in the
Seine?
Yeah, swimming. And it was a very gray, overcast day. The water was poopy. And it looked a little goofy. But again, it's like, was that DSE? Was that compression having an issue with just gray on gray on gray? Were the two combining for a perfect storm that it was really more noticeable? I see, that's the thing about this, because the second like we watched Furiosa or I watched any of the movies on my movie server, didn't notice it. Never became a problem.
We did notice a little bit of DSE recently. What was it on? It was like was it a commercial or something?
Yeah, you pointed it out on a commercial, usually when they cut to like the phone numbers. It was one of those
It's like when they have
pharmaceutical type commercial,
yeah.
and they go to the text card at the very end and stuff. Like, again, if you throw up an all white screen or a 40% gray screen, the chances of noticing DSE in any television are going to increase 100%. Not to say that you're going to see it, but the chance that you're going to see it is going to double, because that's where DSE rears its head. But unless you don't watch QVC 24/7, you're probably going to be fine.
Okay, well, I want to move on to Dolby Atmos and Dolby Vision. We had a couple of questions
Okay.
about those formats. Edward wants to know, does it come with DTSX and Dolby Atmos?
Dolby Atmos, yes. DTSX, off the top of my head as I'm answering this, I don't recall, but guess what? Editor me in the future will put the answer right.
Okay, well, LX Batiatas,
Guess is as good as mine.
hopefully I got that right, says one thing I'd like to mention is Dolby Vision versus HDR10. You mentioned Samsung omitting Dolby Vision.
Yes.
I wonder if in one of these videos you could do a comparison. A lot of people don't buy Samsung because of it, but perhaps the differences between Dolby Vision and HDR10 aren't as wide as we make it seem.
So HDR10 Plus and Dolby Vision, more or less, are or should be relatively interchangeable in terms of feature set and quality and the things that they can do. The whole reason for HDR10 Plus is to basically directly compete with Dolby Vision. Where they differ most is in the adoption, because there is way more Dolby Vision encoded content at every level than there is, say, native HDR10 Plus content. And so I think that's why people still kind of raise their hand and go, shame on Samsung for not having Dolby Vision, because while Samsung will err on the side of HDR10 Plus is just as good, and they're not wrong, they're not lying to you, you can't really take advantage of it if more content isn't actually using it, in which case you are missing out by not having Dolby Vision.
Well, I think a lot of people want to give TCL TVs a try, but they are concerned about quality long term.
Okay.
Chris Tweets says, since I've never had a TCL or know anyone that has, my only question is longevity. Many of the bargain brands seem to be catching up on picture quality, according to many reviews, but do they last? Sir John Smith has an answer to Chris, and they say, I have tried both TCL and Vizio brands over 4 TVs during my life, and none of them made it past 3 years without breaking and with a lot of quirks before they died. They did look good picture quality wise. I mean, to me, I think it's kind of a roll of the dice, don't you think? Like, I know we've seen issues even with the bigger TV brands.
Yeah.
You know, like Sony or Samsung, LG, or whatever.
Yeah.
And we have anecdotal evidence of other problems happening with Hisense, I believe from Caleb.
Yep.
I mean, I totally understand the question and concern. You don't want to
Yeah.
spend a lot of money on something that's gonna, just be like in the dump at some point. But
Well, let me just keep it real with everybody. When it comes to TV reviews or any review that's on a loan period, the likelihood, the reality is we have about 90 days. So it would be disingenuous for me to sit here and be like, you're going to be fine. They're going to keep going and going and going, because I only have a 90-day experience. In that 90 days, the TCL performed flawlessly. Now, I will go out on a limb and say that I put more of my personal trust in TCL as a brand than I would Hisense or even Samsung at the moment.
definitely Vizio.
I do not encourage anyone to buy a Vizio at this point in time. Maybe once upon a time, but not in the last, call it 2 years. It's just not a smart purchase, in my opinion. And the reason I say that I'm okay with TCL and why me personally would and have purchased and even instructed, or not instructed, but helped other people in making a TCL purchase is we do have a couple of TCL TVs in this house, as well as TVs that we know have gone on to other homes, and we're just in contact with those people, and they're still they're still working. They're loving it, and it's working. And those TVs are a little over a year old at this point. We have a TCL 6 series, which I know is not the same as this. The TCL 6 series is like their entry-level TV, but we have a 65-inch TCL 6 series. We've had it for over 2 years. And we have abused the living crap out of this television, including putting it outside where we have not given, two thoughts about it. It's been dusty. It hasn't been rained on, and it's not an outdoor television, but we do have a covered patio. But it's gotten dusty. It's gotten hot. It's gotten cold. And it still works. It still works. So is there a guarantee that anyone can give you that when you go and spend your money on any brand of television or a piece of electronics, it's going to be what they experienced? No, absolutely not. But I personally believe TCL is a reputable quality product that does seem to stand the test of time.
All right. Well, we have a couple of questions about differences in panels
Okay.
on TVs.
Okay.
Paul C. says VA panels with bad off-angle viewing are an absolute no-go. I don't know a single person that only has one sofa directly in front of their TV, with the exception of small rooms where you don't need 98 inches and can easily get an OLED instead. So why do TV manufacturers keep insisting on VA when IPS Pro exists?
I think he meant to type IPS. Look, like the conversation that we kind of alluded to about OLED versus LED. Within LED, you can have VA, you can have IPS, there's LED, there's mini LED, there's micro LED. It's just, there's no right way to do this. No absolute 100% right way to do this. Like, OLED is amazing, but it has brightness limitations. It's cost prohibitive to manufacture in the larger sizes that are becoming increasingly popular. And it struggles sometimes in certain displays, or at least historically, it has struggled with, some burn-in and those types of issues. Now, I haven't faced those myself in any of the OLEDs that we have, and we have a Sony OLED in our bedroom that's going on about 2 years old now, but it has happened to people. Now, VA panels versus IPS, this debate has been going on forever, and there's nothing inherently wrong with a VA-based panel, regardless of the backlighting system, just as there's nothing wrong with IPS. Now, IPS tends to be very popular with gamers and computer monitors because the refresh rates typically seem to be able to be higher. Not always, but typically. That's why you see a lot of computer monitors being IPS-based panels versus VA. VA... Is the viewing angle a little bit not maybe as great? Sure, but one could make the argument that the VA panel has deeper, richer blacks. So it's really in what's important to you. What do you value? But I don't think if I put two panels calibrated side by side showing the exact same content, literally all things being equal, the only variation being VA versus IPS, and I didn't tell you which one was which, I'm willing to go out on a limb and say statistically, I'm not sure people would be able to tell them apart with any real consistency.
Well, Papel Toro wants to know, this actually isn't panel related, I don't think.
Okay.
Wants to know, did TCL fix their green hue issue? I remember my TCL had it, and it was annoying enough for me to get the Sony after owning the TCL less than a year. It was most noticeable with scenes that have fire, like candlelight, torch lights, explosions. Most yellows are greenish, especially when there is no orange mix.
I mean, did they fix it? I guess, because I didn't think it was a problem on this particular TV.
I don't recall it being a problem on our past TCLs.
I don't.
To me,
I don't either.
A green hue has been more common in LG.
LG and Samsung for sure. No, I don't think it was an issue. Also, if you're encountering it, I would encourage you to go into the color menu setting, go down to color temperature, depending on which picture profile you're choosing to watch, will change the color temperature, the master global color temperature figure that any TV uses, not just TCL. For example, like Eco mode on the TCL, if I'm not mistaken, has its color temperature slider in the middle, which admittedly is going to measure cool or blue in the white point. You go to movie mode and pull up that same color slider, you're going to notice that it's all the way to the warm side. And so if you're ever not sure, or you're ever like, oh boy, this looks green, or it looks blue, or, too magenta on any television, one of the easiest things that you can do is go into the main picture menus, go to the color submenu, and if there's an option to adjust the global color temperature, just go down there and play with it and see if that doesn't fix your problem. The other thing that you can do once you kind of use the global color setting to get rid of a green or a blue shift, usually by going more to the warm side, the next thing you can do is if by going to the warm side, you're like, but it's going a little purple or too red, you can grab the tint slider, which is going to have red and green. You can just add a little bit of green, or you can add a little bit of red, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. And then the last thing that you might want to look at is the color, just the color slider in general on a lot of TVs. Just back it down about 5 clicks, 2 to 5 clicks. I also find that takes a little bit of over accentuation of primaries down enough that it makes a big difference. And these are all adjustments you can do by eye. This is not calibration. These are not settings. This is something that you fully need to be aware of. Me telling you this, you could be, quote, making your picture less accurate, less calibrated from the factory. But if it's something that you like and it's getting rid of a green tint or a hue that's bothering you, you should do it. You should try it at least.
Okay, moving on to a few eARC questions.
Okay.
So Wayan says, wait, why is eARC only 60 hertz? Does that mean I need to connect my PS5 to the TV directly instead of an AVR?
In this instance, if your AVR supports 2.1, 8K60, 4K 120 type signals at, the higher frame rates, and you want to enjoy the eARC connectivity with the television, but you're used to being able to plug your gaming console, say, into like a Marantz, right? The new Marantzes have 2.1 support across all of their HDMIs. In this case, yes, you would go into the TV rather than your receiver. And that it is just the way it is, I would have loved to have seen 4K 120 or 2.1 down all four, but that just isn't the case. Now, for some people, if it's like, well, it's not a big deal to go into, HDMI, whatever number it is that supports 2.1, you'll still be able to enjoy all of the gaming features, which is probably what TCL is thinking. You'll still be able to enjoy all of the gaming features and pass that audio down from the TV into a receiver and enjoy home theater or surround sound.
Bob's question, certified for IMAX DTSX audio output via eARC also? Yes?
I believe there was an IMAX mode. Guess what? Future editor Andrew Me. Hit him with the answer.
Okay, KLG has a really great question about a topic I don't think we've ever covered before.
Ooh.
KLG says these TVs are getting massive with impressive results. Wondering if there's a ratio of room size to TV size. Stuffing a massive TV into a small room seems like it would look odd. How does one balance TV size with room size?
Oh, great question. There are actually standards for viewing angle according to broadcast, SMPTE, and THX. And it varies depending on who you want to follow, which standard you want to follow. THX has a slightly wider, more immersive viewing angle standard, whereas SMPTE, I think SMPTE might be 30-degree viewing angle. Don't quote me on that. It's been a minute since I've memorized all of this stuff. One of the easiest ways to know, kind of where you should sit relative to your television, or if you're on the market for a television, how big can you get to enjoy maximum quality and immersion? Easiest thing to do is Google screen distance calculator. You will get about 6 different results. Ratings has a really good one, and it's just one of those where you kind of go in and you just plunk in your figures and you hit calculate, and it spits out, not which TVs to buy, but it spits out hey, you know that you're going to sit 7 feet away from the television. You want 4K, and you watch 4K content. You are a candidate for a TV between 65 and say 75 inches or 78 inches. It's going to give you just a rough number, and you'll be like, they don't make 79-inch TVs. Go with a 75. There is a screen distance calculator that I have used for probably more than 10 years. It's a little bit not as slick as what some of these other websites are starting to produce. It's been around forever. I was turned on to it by a THX certified calibrator. And I will make sure that we include a link to that one down below, because it just gives this calculator, while it's very HTML 1.0, it just gives you so much more information. And in my opinion, I think it would help a lot of new enthusiasts better understand why viewing distance and viewing angles and stuff like that really matter. So I'll be sure to link to that one down below.
Okay, so next I want to talk about Apple TV.
Okay.
John Turner left such a kind comment. I'm gonna go right to his question, so make sure you read it later.
Okay.
It's a heartwarming moment, or should be for you.
Okay.
Anyway, John says, who by the way is a broadcast engineer of 25 years.
Wow.
As you stated, you used an Apple TV 4K for your image source. My question is, how is the processing time with respect to navigation of the menus and apps built into or downloaded to the monitor, and the amount of time for the TV to make the connection to a Wi-Fi network if not using an external device. I ask because I made the mistake of purchasing a television that has so much lag navigating the internal menus and takes almost a minute before connecting to Wi-Fi. I honestly just want to put the TV on the curb with a free sign taped to it. So that's his question.
Okay. The TCL does have, I want to say, 2 or 3 Wi-Fi settings. And what I mean by settings is obviously you can connect it, and you can also just do a hardwired connection if this is a concern. But a lot of people are going to choose Wi-Fi. Once you connect it, if you go to the main menu and you go down into settings, might be under settings, literal settings, or like general, there are energy and Wi-Fi modes. And one of the things that maybe you're running up against is that you can kind of leave or set the standby functionality of the TCL and a lot of other TVs for that matter. You can you can kind of adjust and customize their standby settings. And it may increase energy usage to do this, but it may kind of get rid of the problem that you're encountering. And I believe that the TCL has a setting where you can leave Wi-Fi on in standby and a couple of other things, which means that it's never going to have to try and reacquire the connection upon power up. And that's what I do. I leave those types of things on because I'm with you. I hate waiting to see the Google OS screen populate once I turn a television on, because it's finding the Wi-Fi router, doing the whole ping, 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 and then connecting to all the various services and apps, and then you kind of see the screen populate. So that's one of the things that I set, is I leave that on, and I get it. My standby energy usage is going to be a couple pennies higher, but the convenience of it is, in my opinion, better. So doing that, was the Google OS on the TCL laggy? No more or less than anything else. I mean, the Sony, now that I was able to literally like A/B the menu speeds within an hour of each other, I will say the Sony does seem a little bit snappier, but the TCL is like way better than the Samsung's, home screen OS, things like that, even with an internet connection. So I don't know, that one's really hard to quantify, but definitely check out the standby Wi-Fi settings on any television.
Rob Zergot says, for people who are not a customer for calibration software, they don't want to bother or wouldn't use it often enough to justify the time and cost, can you just turn on Dolby Vision and call it a day? Way back in one of your Sony TV reviews, I had the same TV and used your settings that you shared for custom, the custom profile, and it looked great. And then I watched your calibration episode, took the red pill, and followed you down the rabbit hole. But ever since I purchased the Sony 85-inch X90K used with an Apple TV, I just put it in Dolby Vision, and it looks great to me. Is there enough difference, parentheses, from Dolby Vision when professionally calibrated? And sorry if I missed it, did you do this with the TCL before doing the calibration?
So Apple can do quite a few things. The Apple TV 4K specifically can do quite a few things with respect to output signal. So you can have Apple TV just present your display with what's coming in. It can do the conversion based on, it can match frame rate, it can match dynamic range and all of that. But there's also a way where you can just force everything that you watch through the Apple TV basically into Dolby Vision. When you enable, you just kind of force everything into Dolby Vision from an Apple TV 4K, it negates or turns off the Apple TV's ability to do calibration. I have found that it's not perfect, like the Dolby Vision. It's not perfect, but it's also not bad. And it's one of those situations, at least like what I mentioned with the TCL, where the TCL is not perfect in its gamma curve. It crushes a little bit, but it looks good. It I preferred the imperfection of it, actually. And I feel that way about Apple TVs, like forced Dolby Vision mode. So in a lot of ways, I'm a fan, and I'm not gonna lie to you. I've used it. I've just been like, you know what, I'm well enough alone, and just throw everything into Dolby Vision, and it looks fine. You know, it really does. Do I know that it's pixel perfect accurate? Of course, I know it's not, but it looks good. It looks fine. So I wouldn't fault anyone for going that route. I really wouldn't. But it's not always 100% like perfect, you know.
Rolig has a question about the Sony X90L. As a X90L (parentheses 85-inch) owner,
Okay.
I'm having a hard time understanding the comparison between the two. I believe, obviously, he's talking about
TCL and
TCL.
Sony. Okay.
Where exactly is the X90L better besides upscaling? Brightness, no. Black levels, no. Contrast, no. Blooming, no. Backlight control, no. ALR, no. Gaming, no. Color, a wash, maybe. Some of those aren't even close from what I've seen so far and has been tested. Is the 98-inch X90L vastly different than the 85-inch?
I don't believe that it would be. Where is the Sony better? The Sony is better in scaling, a little bit of motion processing. It's better. Prior to the TCL's arrival, I would say that the X90L, because it's a more traditional LED or full array LED backlighting system, like the control over the zones was better. But TCL definitely has put a focus this new season of televisions on controlling backlighting to the point where I'm like, I think they've caught up in that regard. For me, it's just going to come down. For me, it really comes down to the scaling of legacy signals, the maintaining of original grain structure that may exist in a transfer. It's going to come down to skin tone texture and inherent edge fidelity in skin tones and hair and certain fabrics. I just find that Sony does a better job with organic textures, human especially, when it comes to micro contrast, edge fidelity, things like that. I just find that a lot of the newer, brighter TVs, while very impressive in destroying the Sony in every way, in light output, peak luminance, things like that, they gloss over some of that detail. And on a 98-inch, it's appreciable. On a 65, that's a little harder. 75 even, maybe a little harder. 85, 98, it's appreciable. But you might have to deal with a slightly duller, dimmer image. So it really is, what is your focus? You know, as someone who spends a lot of time studying cinematographers, studying the act of filmmaking, and has been on that side of things, I'm a stickler for that kind of stuff. You know, I really am. To me, getting a bright, saturated, in-your-face image is actually easier than getting one that's more nuanced and subtle. And so from that lens, the Sony is the better television. But the TCL seems to have gotten dangerously close. If I'm Sony, and I haven't seen the new Bravias, for the record, everything I'm about to say could be absolutely annihilated when the Bravia 9 gets here. But if I'm Sony, if I don't already have purchased several of these TCL samples for my R&D department, Sony, bust out the credit card and do it. Because this is the closest I've seen to getting all of the pomp and circumstance of super bright LED mixed just right with the finesse and the detail of Sony processing.
Great answer. One last question.
Okay.
My father really wants to talk about Mad VR. Okay.
Wait, the screen name.
is My
Is My
Father
Father
Loves.
Loves. Okay.
Yes.
I thought someone was just saying My Father Loves Mad VR, and I'm like, well, who are we talking
No,
to?
no.
Okay.
That's their handle.
Okay.
All right. Now with TV starting to creep into projector-sized images,
Sure.
my fascination with the Mad VR envy has started to skyrocket.
Okay.
So what's better? A 2.35, how do you say, like the
Like the
aspect-
CinemaScope, like
two
235 to 1?
2.3, is that what you're saying?
Sure.
Okay, a
It's an aspect
2.351 screen that has the ability to seamlessly change aspect ratio on the fly
Okay.
from scope to 16:9, coupled with the NLS, which is nonlinear stretch tech,
Okay.
or a 16:9 taking advantage of NLS slash aspect ratio switching to get rid of half of the black bar space on scoped movies, if that makes sense. And they go on to say some other stuff, but close it out with, anyway, I know you don't normally cover projectors as often as everything else, and maybe no external video processors question. But with the release of the Mad VR NV Core, I'm sort of consumed with the idea of a future purchase for my combo living room slash home theater. And what will be the best I can do for my budget that's considering aesthetics while trying to get the largest display and making the most use of it.
I'm probably going to have to do like the Star Wars scroll for this comment. Okay. First off, I started my career as a projectionist. So I'm actually as much a projectionist or projection enthusiast as I am a TV one. Maybe that comes as a shock. Look, when it comes to different aspect ratios, you've rattled off projection and you've rattled off a couple of ways to handle it. And there really are a couple of ways to handle aspect ratios or changing aspect ratios before we even get into video processors like Mad VR. If you can afford an auto masking screen, and these types of screens are super cool, very cool. I was fortunate enough to have one for a while in my dedicated home theater many, many years ago. They're super cool, but they are often prohibitively expensive. So that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is you're going to use a masking screen with an anamorphic lens attachment, and that's going to be on a motorized sled that can come in front of the lens and off of the lens. And that's another way that you can enjoy multi-aspect ratios without necessarily needing to do anything to the actual signal where you're losing content. And then, of course, now we're getting into the Mad VR world where, you get a 16:9 screen or a 235 screen, and then you're using manipulation of the signal in whatever capacity, a little bit, a lot. It's really going to come down to just what are you subjectively comfortable with, where you're stretching, blowing things up, enlarging the image to fill the screen. As a filmmaker, I despise this practice. I really do. And I'm not saying that to judge you in any way, shape, or form, or judge anyone. At the end of the day, as a filmmaker, I despise this practice, but I also am realistic in that as a filmmaker, I do want people to see what I've made. And if this is the only way to have it done, or this is the only way to get it in front of people, go with God. But knowing how much painstaking effort and money, for the record, goes into capturing any image at a professional level, even a video like this one, a YouTube video like this one, the thought that someone takes ownership of the experience that someone else has carefully crafted for them and changes it, it kind of bugs me.
Oh my gosh, can I just squeeze in right here?
Sure.
To me, listening to you right now, it reminds me of when I was a wedding photographer.
Yeah.
And I would deliver the photos to the couple, and I've spent endless amounts of time, not
Yeah.
only like at the wedding shooting it, but
In post.
in post production, editing,
Yeah.
cropping, putting, my personal spin on it as the artist, which is, I would hope, why they hired me.
Yeah.
And then to deliver it and then see them put some
Instagram filter.
stupid Instagram filter on it. It would just, make my skin crawl.
Yeah.
So that to me is very similar to what you're talking about.
It is. And again, full disclosure.
But you can't stop it.
You can't, but I don't have to encourage it. Now, I have not myself played with Mad VR, but Mad VR is not new. I mean, they might be new, their product might be new, it might be unique in some way, but video processors that have attempted to give viewers the ability to do away with the black bars and change aspect ratios, that stuff's been around forever. It really has. I had a I've had several DVDO processors that have done some form of that. At one point when I had Sim 2 projectors in my theater, they had a video processor. Was it a Lumagen? I can't remember who made it, but they had a video processor. It did stuff like that too, all the time. I even had stacked Sim 2 projectors that needed a video processor to align the image of two projectors for twice the brightness and stuff like that. So video processing, trickery, little gimmicks like this, they've been around forever. Mad VR could be great. I don't know, but I have watched their Mad VR's, not like another reviewer, Mad VR's own demos showing. There's one demo where it's a frozen image of a football game. Obviously, if they hit play on it, they were going to get sued. But it's just a still of a football game. I think it was a Baylor football game, if I'm not mistaken. And they show on a 16 by 9 broadcast, but they have it on a 235 screen, which is wider than 16 by 9. And then the image below shows that it's been Mad VR'd, you know what I mean? To fit the full width of the 235 screen. And the gentleman, I believe he's the owner or founder of Mad VR. He's down in a little corner, gamer streamer style. And he's kind of talking you through, like, notice how the stretched image, it's not all that stretched and da-da-da-da-da. No, it is. It is. I'm sorry. The center of the image is not, but the edges most definitely are. And he calls out, I think it's the punter, who's obviously way behind the line. And he's like, look, the proportions, the punter looks huge. He just did. The punter looks abnormally large. And if you allow your eyes to go from the punter to the line, you're like, no, he's bigger. The literal punter is bigger than the offensive line. So is it something that you're going to notice, though, in a non-still? That part I don't know. Like I said, I've never played with Mad VR, but
Adding it to a television?
Adding it to a television is just going to be like, okay, so you go and watch Twisters, or you go and watch Furiosa. We've been talking about Furiosa this entire time. And Furiosa's in 2:3:5. It's in a scope aspect ratio. And you're going to stretch it and tweak the image in real time to fit the full 98-inch edge-to-edge 16 by 9. Anytime you monkey with the signal, you increase the possibility for anomalies and artifacts. You just do. And it's not in keeping with the original intent of the artist, the director, the cinematographer, 1,500 to 3,000 people that all had to come together in one moment to make this thing. And I don't know. I think to me, it's like, oh, if anyone clips this and sends it to Mad VR, if you get a hold of this, I'm not trying to put you down. I'm just, as someone that creates content and has created content, like I just, oh, it hurts. It hurts. That's how I feel about it.
Well,
what a way to end.
Hopefully if they clip it, they send the entire clip.
Please.
Yeah. So there's context.
Yeah.
But I think that we can wrap
Okay.
this unplugged. I think it was a pretty good episode.
I think so. I think so. I love TVs. I love TV reviews. I'm really grateful y'all turned out to watch this one. This has actually been one of our more popular TV reviews. I know we don't do them as much as everything else, but I enjoy them. I'm probably more of a video file than I am an audio file. So that's it for this one. The TCL QM851G is in the 98-inch anyway. Zero hesitation. Great TV. Seal of approval. Stamp it. Definitely in the running for TV of the year, without a doubt. So, anything else?
Nope.
All right. Well, the only person that has to like anything's you. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you Sunday with a brand new review. One you guys have been waiting for. It's coming. It's happening. See you Sunday. Bye.